You are gonna help me stop it.
Wait, us?
Yeah, you. Why, you got someplace to be?
I love that guy.
Hey, welcome back, ScreenCrush. I'm Ryan Airy, and this is all of the Easter eggs, references, and little things you might have missed in the
Big game
trailer for the Thunderbolts Asterix. And a little later, I'm going to talk to Colton and Tommy to get their thoughts on the trailer. And guys, in this trailer, we finally get the reveal of the movie's mystery villain, the Void. But first, let's break this whole thing down. Also, quick reminder, check out our merch store links below to get our special Captain America parody shirt, the America's Ass commemorative stamp, Ross 24 campaign shirt, and the Cap Elevator RPG. Links for those and our free membership are below. So, as we've been traveling our live show, I always ask the audience what Marvel they're most excited for. And people are absolutely pumped for this movie. I think it's because we just want to see more Marvel crossovers. You see, the Multiverse Saga decided to only use Avengers movies as a culmination to the overall story instead of forming a regular team. And in this movie, we're seeing the in-world effects of that decision. When the team is disassembled, we see the government is now trying to create their own team, or their own superheroes to fill that void. And I think that's what the Sentry is going to be, a government-created superhero. After all, in the MCU, the government has a long history of trying to create superhumans. It started with Steve Rogers in the 1940s. Dr. Banner became the Hulk because of an experiment to create superhumans, and then we saw Ross flat out turn Emil Blonsky into
an abomination.
So if Val is trying to leverage American power around the planet to, say, take out Wakanda, then she's going to want ultra-powerful heroes at her disposal. And then maybe the Thunderbolts were recruited to create a team that could help control the Sentry. Now, in the comics, there have been several instances where the government stepped in to create their own Avengers. Following the events of Secret Invasion and Civil War, Norman Osborn formed his own team of Avengers, secretly called the Dark Avengers, that was composed of villains. Similarly, in the comics, the Thunderbolts were originally formed by supervillains pretending to be heroes, and this happened after the Avengers disappeared. So these Thunderbolts have similar circumstances surrounding their formation. But over the years in the comics, the Thunderbolts evolved into a group of more reformed villains and anti-heroes like we see in this movie. Now we start off on the Manhattan skyline. Notice we can see construction cranes surrounding the former Avengers Tower. Now in the previous trailer, we learned that the tower's mysterious buyer was Val. Who's Val? Well, Val is Valentina Fontaine, Julia Louis-Dreyfus's character.
It's Director De Fontaine.
Now in the comics, she was a femme fatale figure to Nick Fury, but in the MCU, we've seen her slowly gathering together various anti-heroes that we see in this film. She hired Natasha to take out Clint Barton, she recruited John Walker, and in Wakanda Forever, we learned that she's the director of the CIA, and she's part of the administration's policy of triggering regime change in Wakanda. So we start with her at what looks like a congressional hearing where she flat out tells the panel, and the audience,
the Avengers are not coming.
Again, this is something I think the MCU's been building up to for a while. In the comics, there have been several times when the Avengers were split, and it led to the rise of groups like the aforementioned Dark Avengers, who were villains pretending to be heroes, or the Young Avengers, who had to redeem the mistakes of their elders. Now, I do wish the Marvel Cinematic Universe had been seeding this a little bit longer. I wish we would have seen the effects of what it's like when there is no Avengers team. But I'm going to talk to Colton and Tommy about that later. And then we see the Void over the city. So the Void is a supervillain in the comics who is the arch enemy of the Sentry. Now, there's some actually really cool storylines with him in the comics that I think they might be adapting for the movie, so I'm not going to spoil them here. And if any of you know the comics, please don't spoil the plot lines for everyone else. I will be talking about spoilers after my discussion with Colton and Tommy.
She says, I'm one behind, so no spoilers.
Sentry was once the greatest hero in the world. He was basically Marvel's Superman. But for the good of mankind, he helped create a forgetting spell that made the world forget about him and made him forget that he was ever a hero. So in this movie, he's played by Lewis Pullman, and we met him in the first trailer.
Oh no.
Who are you?
I'm Bob.
So I think the government, or maybe some shady corporation, have given him powers, because in the room where they discovered Bob, we saw designs of his costume inside of this box. Now, the Sentry is a hero who's always had a tenuous grasp on his own sanity, so he is perfect for a group of outcasts and misfits like the group being gathered together in this movie. But I really like that we don't know much about him. He could be part of a shady government conspiracy to create a new hero. He could be some corporate mascot gone rogue. We just don't know, and this fits in with the tone of the film. See, Val is a master at obscuring the truth and keeping people from knowing what's really going on. Characters like her thrive when people just don't know who to trust. And maybe that's where you're at right now. Like on social media, we see these fake news stories all the time that only exist to drive up engagement and make corporations even more money.
Yeah, sure is hard to know what news you can trust these days. Gotta be real careful what hydrants you sniff.
Yeah, for dogs, that's a concern, but for people, if you want to cut through the bias and hear the real news, I recommend Ground News. They're the sponsor of this video. I use Ground News every day. I like it so much, I subscribed on my own. Ground News is an app and website that gathers related articles from across the world into one place, but they give you the context about the source's political leaning, their reliability, and most importantly, their ownership. So this means that you can see through the bias and think critically about the news you consume. Like, here's a story about how this January was the warmest one ever. Now, sources on the left focus on how alarming this was because of climate change, while sources on the right were more likely to say the results were simply surprising. Like, I can see the story had 28 left-leaning sources, 30 center, and 19 right-leaning. And best of all, I can see that media ownership, so I know who's trying to deliver this message to me. Guys, I want to know that the news isn't trying to sway me one way or the other. So Ground News even has a blind spot section that shows you the news stories that each side is ignoring. For instance, here's a story about how support for Elon Musk has plummeted among Republicans. Or there's this story being ignored on the left about how the White House says that they're going to cancel millions of dollars worth of Politico subscriptions. Ground News is an incredible resource, and I've been looking for a service like this for years, so I highly encourage you to check them out. If you go to ground.news/SC or click the QR code right here, you'll get 40% off their Vantage plan, which includes unlimited access to every feature. This deal is only available for a limited time. Your subscription will not only help out our channel, but you'll also be supporting an independent platform working to make the media landscape more transparent. Now, back to Thunderbolts. The shadow of the void falls over the city, and I think this is the part of Midtown that is near Avengers Tower. Notice these bridges that are close to the one where the Avengers assembled at the Battle of New York, and Val narrates,
Who will keep the American people safe?
and see, that's key. She says keep America safe. Not the world, but America, because this is a team that will be controlled by the government and by her, because she's kind of an anti-Nick Fury figure. Whereas Fury trusted in heroes and wanted them to help the world, Val wants to control the heroes and use them to protect America. And then we see that Bucky has captured the team. So this is likely after the extended chase sequence we saw in the last trailer, where we saw Bucky blow up Alexi's car.
Is that Bucky?
And now it looks like that he was capturing the team to deliver them to Val. And then Yelena starts to narrate why they're not a good team.
So none of us comply? So what, do we all just punch and shoot?
Which is really kind of playing off fan expectations. See, when they announced the lineup of the Thunderbolts, all of us were wondering, why is it all super soldiers and only one person has superpowers? Yelena points out that none of them can fly after she jumps off Bank of America Tower during a mission. And then we see Val in a limo talking to her assistant Mel, who was actually originally going to be played by Io Ataberry before she dropped out during the strikes. We see Alexei on his couch. This is just before he's recruited by Yelena, like we saw in the last trailer. Now remember, Alexei is the super soldier who is Natasha and Yelena's kind of spy father. They all pretended to be a regular American family in the 1990s when he was spying on S.H.I.E.L.D. And then, decades later, he helped Yelena and Natasha take down the Red Room in the movie Black Widow. Now this is Bob Reynolds, aka the Sentry. Now in the last trailer, we saw everybody meeting each other unexpectedly and getting into a fight, probably because they were all set up to arrive at that particular time and place. And that is the room where they discovered Bob in a hospital gown. Now as we see in this trailer, this room was immediately flooded in flames, so we can presume that they were set up to die, which is why they're on the run in the next chase sequence. Now Bob is the most powerful hero in the Marvel Universe, but he's also a mentally unstable person, which means the Thunderbolts will have to get him under control if they want his help against the mystery villain, the Void. And then we see John Walker. Now in the show Falcon and the Winter Soldier, the government appointed him to be the new Captain America, but after secretly taking some super soldier serum, he killed a man in broad daylight, prompting Sam and Bucky to take back the shield.
Because bitches can't be trusted with it.
Afterwards, he was recruited by Val.
Things are about to get weird. So when they do, we're not gonna need a Captain America. We're gonna need a US agent.
The song in the trailer is Nothing's Gonna Stop Us Now by Starship, which was originally featured in the movie Mannequin. It's the perfect choice for this trailer because the lyrics are ironic. This team couldn't possibly build anything together except a dream, because a dream is a shared delusion, which again, I'm going to talk to you guys about after the talkback. Now, as Yelena says we've all done bad things, they cut to Ghost, who is the former S.H.I.E.L.D. assassin who has the power to phase through objects or people. And then when it cuts to Taskmaster, she says,
You can't escape the past.
Now, I want to talk about Taskmaster for a second. In the movie Black Widow, she was a silent assassin who could mimic anyone's fighting style. Then it was revealed that she was Dreykov's daughter, an innocent person who Natasha believed she had killed as part of her initiation into S.H.I.E.L.D. So, when Natasha freed her from the mind control at the end of Black Widow, it was a moment of redemption for Natasha. So we know that in Endgame, she went to her grave knowing that she had no unfinished business. But in these trailers, we've only seen Taskmaster in one scene, making me think that she dies pretty quick. Now, if that's true, then it's a shame for Natasha's character arc, but it does mean they could replace her with a more comic-accurate version of the character.
What do you mean?
Well, in the comic book, the Taskmaster is a fun villain. He constantly constantly runs his mouth. He's like Deadpool. And then we see that Yelena has actually been narrating to a prisoner, making this diegetic narration, or narration that happens like within the context of the movie. You know, like Tony narrating to Bruce in Iron Man 3.
You with me?
I was, yeah. We were at
You actively napping?
I drifted.
Yelena is very charming when she holds people under duress, you know, like when she met Kate Bishop.
Are you really not hungry? That fight was so long. It's really tasty, really tasty.
As Bucky washes his arm in the dishwasher, he says,
So you can do something about it now, or live with it forever.
And this is a man who knows what it's like to live with something forever. Like in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, he spent so much time going through a list of people that he wronged when he was a Hydra agent and then went out to make amends.
I'm no longer the Winter Soldier.
I'm James Bucky Barnes,
And you're part of my efforts to make amends.
Then we see Alexei having a great time with Bucky, just like their buddy cop episode in What If Season 3.
Where did that come from? Did you have that the whole time?
And then we get a glimpse of the Sentry.
You thought you were gonna be some great savior?
So the Sentry catches Bucky's punch, then detaches his arm, and we see him tossing Alexei through a window. Now all of this looks like it takes place in the penthouse of the former Avengers Tower. Remember, in the last trailer we saw the team arrive in this penthouse and meet Val when she revealed that she bought the place.
I mean, the place wasn't cheap, but it's got good optics.
Now, if I had a guess, I would say that Bob's powers activate, and then he has one of his episodes. And so the team will have to help him through his mental break in time for him to help fight his archenemy, the Void. And by the way, we know this is the Sentry because this is his complete comic-accurate van brace from his uniform right here. And then we see John Walker with his kid reading the news about him. So this article features the first image we ever saw of Wyatt Russell in his Captain America suit. So this photo would have been taken from the press pool that we see at the end of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Episode 1. It reads, "The Fall of a Hero." And remember, all through the show, we saw Walker strutting into places with this expectation that he could do anything just because he's Captain America.
A word of advice then, stay the hell out of my way.
But in Episode 4, he finally caved into the pressure and murdered a man out of revenge.
It wasn't me! It wasn't me!
Very un-Captain America-like behavior. Now in the comics, Walker was also briefly Captain America and then became a new hero called US Agent. And in this trailer we see his new shield, which looks just awful, but that's kind of the point. He doesn't have a cool shield. He's no Captain America. Like everyone else on this team, he exists in the shadow of another, more legendary hero. Then we get the elevator shot that we saw in the last trailer of the team arriving in the penthouse. Remember, in that last trailer, we saw Val serving herself a drink from Tony Stark's bar that we saw in the first Avengers movie. And then we see shots of them on the street where everything looks gray. Now, I think this is because the Void is attacking the city and casting a shadow over Manhattan.
So what is the Void anyways?
Well, basically, he's nothing. He just erases all life, buildings, people, everything.
Oh, so he's like the nothing and never-ending story.
Exactly. And then we get a few action shots. Bucky takes out this Jeep that was chasing the Thunderbolts in Alexei's car. Then we see the cranes that were outside of Avengers Tower falling, probably after this helicopter crashes into them. And then Alexei says,
This team can be the heroes on the Wheaties box with the little giddy toy.
So the new Thunderbolts poster does feature the team on a Wheaties box, which, by the way, is a place of honor for the greatest athletes in the world. It's a real-world way to honor the heroes of sports. But Wheaties cereal doesn't have toys, so technically Alexei is wrong. Then we see various action shots and character shots, including the room where they discover Bob filling up with fire, R.I.P. Taskmaster. But for me, the seminal shot of the trailer is the team working to hold up this section of the road against some unstoppable force. These are not the most powerful heroes. They don't have the best power, but what they do have is heart. And then we see the team walking into the Void together. Now, I do have a theory about that, but it's filled with spoilers, so I'll tell you about it after I get Tommy and Colton's take on this trailer. So I'm joined here by Colton Ogburn and Tommy Bechtold to get their thoughts on the trailer, but first, I would be remiss if I didn't mention something, an Easter egg that I didn't talk about earlier. We do see Yelena Belova holding up this vial, which I think is a vial that is the serum that gives Bob his powers. See, in the comics, I don't want to get too far into it for spoilers, but Bob does get his powers from a serum, which is symbolic of like his real life Bob Reynolds, his alcoholism, which is pretty interesting. I don't think they'll go, believe me, if they were going to adapt the Sentry properly in the MCU, it would like win Academy Awards. It's a great comic book I highly suggest you guys check out. But first, I've got Colton and Tommy here. I want to get your thoughts on the trailer and then this weird thing where the MCU has denied us from having Avengers movies, but I don't think have really taken advantage of that creative opportunity. First of all, Tommy, what did you think of the trailer?
I really like the trailer. I think this movie, I think we're going to be feasting on Marvel content, nerd content in general this year, and this trailer did nothing to dissuade me on the backs of this and the Fantastic Four trailer. Not so much the Harrison Ford Air Force One scene that came out for Captain America. I feel very very bullish on it. I love love the characters that they're bringing in to assemble this iteration of the Thunderbolts. I think this movie looks like a lot of fun. I think that I think it's going to be, not as hyper violent and profane as James Gunn's Suicide Squad movie, but I think we are going to have a lot of fun with these kind of anti-heroes, and I'm ready for it.
Yeah, and as I'll talk about later, I think there is a very specific reason why this group of anti-heroes are the ones who were picked to fight the Void in particular. But Colton, what were your thoughts on the trailer?
I really liked it, man. This is the first trailer for the Thunderbolts that actually got me, like, really excited. I'm not sure why. Yeah, it just seems fun. To Tommy's point, it feels very Suicide Squad. It's like Marvel's version of the Suicide Squad. I'm not super knowledgeable about the games and stuff, but isn't there like a Suicide Squad game where like they have to go after Superman or the Justice League?
Yeah, they kill the Justice League, yeah.
That's kind of
critiques about the game, so don't worry about that.
That's kind of the vibe I'm getting here. I think it's really cool to have like these, not regular, but you know what I mean? Like Yelena says, so what, we all just shoot people? Like having these types of heroes going up against like a godlike, bad guy. I think that's going to be really cool. I think it's going to be hilarious. And yeah, I liked the what's the name of the song that they had in this trailer?
We built this city.
Stop Us by Starship.
Yeah. Oh yeah, nothing's gonna. Yeah, same band, different.
From that. Mannequin, from the '80s film Mannequin, where a guy builds a mannequin, it comes to life, and they fall in love. I've only seen it a couple times. I don't know. So
I'm excited.
Yeah, I am too. But you bring up an interesting thing that I've always thought about these teams, right? These superhero teams. Hawkeye, I always thought, was one of the most important Avengers because he gave us a baseline. Like Bill Murray one year during the Olympics tweeted they should have an ordinary person out there swimming with everybody else so we have an understanding of like how great these athletes are. And I always felt the same way about Hawkeye. And it's one thing I loved about the Hawkeye series when she said to him, "How did you lose your hearing?" And then they cut to that montage of all the battles and explosions he's been in.
Yeah, makes sense.
So especially with technology in the MCU, like with Iron Man and nanotechnology, I felt like we were getting to the point where, to paraphrase Thor, where science had just become magic. So I'm looking forward to getting grounded fights, very like hand-to-hand combat, realistic, live stunts. The difference between Shang-Chi Acts 1 and 2 versus Shang-Chi Act 3, so I'm with you guys. On our live shows, Colton, we've been asking people all the time, like, what Marvel movie you pumped about? And nobody's really hot on Brave New World that we've talked to, but everybody's looking forward to the Thunderbolts. And I think it's because we want a team-up, Tommy. Yeah. I think that the weird thing about the MCU is it was built for these team-up movies, and then maybe Marvel came into Avengers Endgame and said, okay, well, that's the billion. We want to rush to get to the big $1 billion one. So rather than take their time with, like building up the characters and having them culminate in one Avengers movie and then another, remember, the multiverse saga was originally just going to be 5 years long. Both movies were supposed to come out this year, Avengers, Kang Dynasty, and Secret Wars. I think that they made the same mistake the DCEU did. I think they just rushed ahead to the big, giant team-up like Endgame instead of giving us a small team-up like this. Tom, what's your take, though, Tommy? Do you think that they've made a mistake in not giving us Avengers movies? Do you think that this movie should have come out years ago? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I'm of the mind that, these movies that have existed in the post Endgame that are don't have Avengers haven't addressed the lack of Avengers enough. They've all felt like these separate movies that are like they kind of have tacked on post credit scenes or like quick little bits in the middle of them that like tangentially tie in. I've felt this like kind of as a viewer this absence that is there that I think the ramifications could have been more. Like, I think we could have seen more examples in the films of like, this is what happens when you don't have an Iron Man or a Hulk or a Thor or a Captain America. We're finally going to get Captain America this week, but it's like, I feel like they course corrected or soft rebooted the world too much and kind of created this like, it's hard to connect with it as a viewer in the same way that we connected once we got, once Iron Man and Thor and Captain America and then Iron Man 2 had come out prior to the first Avengers movie. It's like we were dialed in. We knew what we were getting. We felt, I think viewers felt very in on the story. Whereas right now, I do not feel connected to where the MCU is going yet. I'm very hopeful that I will.
There's an infrequency to how often we see these characters, but there was also a joy in watching like Iron Man, who is in these very grounded movies, fight aliens, or watching Steve Rogers meet Thor. Like, just to get to see different people interact together was so much fun, and I definitely think they've been missing that. Colton, one thing I love about the videos you do here on the channel is you are, I think, a storyteller at heart, and you're great at really looking into what makes a story work, and sometimes, doing theory videos where you make your own stories. Looking back at the past couple years in the MCU, where do you think this lack of Avengers team, like Tommy said, if they're going to do it, they should at least tell us why. What creative opportunities do you think they have missed by not focusing in on, geez, there's no Avengers, ignoring the fact they probably should have had other Avengers movies?
Oh, well, I was going to say Phase 4 is where at the end of Phase 4, there should have been an Avengers movie. Something that the MCU has done is they have broadened their interconnectivity in the sense of they're releasing all of these shows and movies and a lot of new characters and having them all exist in this same universe, but there's no interconnectivity. They're not having them cross over. What's the point in having them all be in the same universe and having all the restraints of a connected cinematic universe if you're not going to have the payoff of having them actually tie together and team up? I think that this movie is going to be a lot about lineage. Like, I think it's going to be a big movie for Bucky and what his role is in a world where Steve Rogers is gone. He's not the one who got the shield. He understands why he didn't get the shield. He's glad Sam got the shield. So what is his role? I like that in the trailer we're seeing him kind of put the heroes together. And I also think Yelena is the other half of this, and she's going to be like a big role in it. I honestly think that everybody else is probably going to die, but that's just my little theory there.
Taskmaster is so done.
Yeah, and I
think
think
in one scene in the trailer.
Yeah, and I think Alexi's done too. I think he's going to be a great part of the movie, very funny, but I think he's going to die in a sacrificial way. I think John Walker's going to redeem himself and die in a certain way. Because really, I think they have to, because they are introducing too many characters, in my personal opinion.
And you need the stakes to matter. By killing people off. Yeah,
I know we had that same thought, or at least I did, at the end of Avengers Age of Ultron. I was like, how are they going to handle this many characters? But they pulled it off. Now I think they really have hit their point. I would have liked to have personally seen either a team-up movie, whether it's called Avengers or not, but like at the end of Phase 4, after we saw like Falcon and Winter Soldier, after we saw Black Widow, I would have liked to have just seen Bucky and Yelena be part of a team-up movie. And, no disrespect to the other characters, but I don't really care about Ghost and John Walker and whoever. Take Bucky and Yelena. I care about
John Walker, but yeah.
Yeah, and have them be with She-Hulk and Sam and all these new characters and Miss Marvel and do a team-up movie. And that movie could have been about the absence of the Avengers and like, we're the new Avengers. Call it the new Avengers.
But the thing I keep going back to here, Tommy, is if there's not going to be Avengers, that's fine. They've done that in the comics, and it works great. Because like I said earlier, there's always a team to fill the void. There's the Dark Avengers. There's the Young Avengers. What bothered me about this is they never really explained why they never reformed the Avengers.
Fill the what?
Fill the void. See what you did there?
Yeah, I see.
Whoever's cutting this, take that out. So, Tommy, what do you think, though? Like, they never explained why these massive amounts of heroes that are gathered at the end never reformed the team. And so because we never heard why, say in Wakanda Forever, we never heard anybody be like, if only the Avengers were here to be a check on Wakanda's power. Like, we never had the sense of like, oh my God, there's no Avengers, because maybe then they would have formed. I just think it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that's kind of, what I was trying to articulate, but did not do so well in my first comments is like, we don't really bring up why they're not around. Like it's not brought up in the films. It's more just like the general it is what it is. Like it's like that frustrating statement that you hear from adults when you're a kid, where you're like, why can't we do this? We just can't. It is what it is. This is just deal with it. And I think there's probably a variety of behind the scenes reasons for that. Creatively, they maybe weren't 100%. They didn't want to make any full commitments to declaring these characters either defunct or or promising sequels to these characters. But I really think correct me if I'm wrong, but at the end of Endgame, are they not kind of isn't it like Sam, Rhodey, Ant-Man, and a couple of other Avengers are hanging out at the campus, and that was just it, right? That was, as far as we know, that was the last, and they died on their way back to their home planets or something. I don't know. It was.
It's strange that they never gave us a reason they weren't together. Go ahead, Colton.
It doesn't make sense. It's all just like meta reasoning. There's no in-universe reason.
Right.
There's still a shit ton of superheroes who are active superheroes in this world. So when you say there are no Avengers, like what does that even mean? Are you telling me that if like this world-ending threat were to come up, all of these active superheroes aren't going to team up and
we don't have ID badges anymore, guys. Sorry, we can't even get in the bed.
Yeah, that's really what it boils down to. There's no formal structure, but again, we don't understand why. And what I hate about it is if you look at the end of Civil War, the dissolution of the Avengers was a major event that made us look forward to getting to see them finally come back together eventually in Avengers Endgame. And I think just narratively, they missed an opportunity in the broader MCU of not giving us the reason why they're not together. You know, for Sam, maybe Sam didn't want to be Captain America. They could have done this in the individual movies, but I think that they missed something there because we're going to miss that cathartic reason they finally return. So Tommy, Colton, thank you guys for joining me. Now I want to get into something about the villain of the movie that's a little bit of a spoiler, so you've been warned. So that shot at the end of the trailer where they walk into the void, I'm about to tell you a big spoiler from the comics. So please click off the video if you don't want to be spoiled. So in the comics, the Sentry is the void. He doesn't know that, but the reason he made the world forget about him is so he could stop being the Sentry, so then the void would stop appearing. Now remember, in the first trailer, we saw the heroes running through a weird mindscape. And I think that this is what happens after they walk into this void together. They actually enter into Bob's mind and then they work to help him stop the void from inside of his own brain. See, these heroes could never physically stop the Sentry, but because they're all broken people who have dealt with trauma, I think they could enter Bob's mind and then help him process his emotions. And I think that's kind of perfect. Marvel basically picked these characters because these are the actors who had like existing time on their contracts. But it seems like they crafted a story that's unique to them. This is a villain that maybe the Avengers couldn't defeat because they're not broken people. However, because these particular characters could empathize with Bob and help him through that trauma, they're the perfect heroes that we need in this film. Guys, just a reminder to subscribe to Ground News by clicking our link below. So, what did you think of the trailer? Are you excited? Do you want to see the full Sentry? Do you think the Sentry is the void in the Marvel Cinematic Universe? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments or on our free-to-join Discord server. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe and smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.